Coach Tim Murphy is this week's guest on ETS Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Brock Galvin. Coach Murphy is the head coach at Clayton Valley Charter High School. They won the 2A California State Championship last year. And on this week's episode, we talk about how to build a program, how to motivate and inspire your players. And we talk about adrenaline, how to harness it both in the weight room and on the field. Coach Murphy is a fascinating, trend-setting coach. His dad is a master's and doctorate degree from Yale in biochemistry, and that intelligence was definitely passed on to his son, who runs an incredible program. In this episode, we also check out his double tight, double wing offense that has been made famous across the country and has had countless 2,000 and even 3,000 yard backs. Hope you guys enjoy it. Go ahead and check it out, actually. So, how are you? Yeah, how are you doing with all this, man?
I'm good, man. I love the question. I just don't want to make it too much about me because I feel like a lot of coaches has kind of have used so many reasons that kids should play, and I'm like, man, you can read right through some of these guys. It's them.
Mm-hmm.
They want to play. They want to coach. And I get it because we love coaching, right? Just like you're saying, you're passionate. You're always going to have it in your blood. I'm always going to have it in my blood too. But I've kind of felt some phoniness through a little bit of this with some of the coaches. And it's like, there's more to it. And at the same time, and there is some definite truth to the mental health. There's no doubt. I think some of it's been kind of warped and overblown. And then in some ways it's been underlooked. The suicide rate is real. We had one not just recently, wasn't a football kid in our school, and I really believe this had something to do with it. A coach out in Idaho, I was just talking the other day, has had 3 kids attempt suicide since COVID started in his football program. Rich Hargett, I don't know if you remember him. He's a spread guy. You probably heard of him.
Okay.
He actually wants to morph towards our offense, and I'm morphing more towards spread. So it's kind of funny, the conversation we're having. He's a throw it at every given moment guy. I'm a run it every given moment, but yet he wants to use our offense, and then we're moving more towards spread, mostly because of Jake, and we have some talent, some guys that we can throw the ball to. So that's a real situation. And I think, what really does bother me, Brock, is the small towns and the inner city kids really seem to kind of get screwed on this, and more so the inner city kids. I'm not going to push the systemic racism card and all that kind of stuff. And there's, everyone has their opinion on that. But when it does come down to sports and situations, the suburbs got it easy, and these inner city kids got it bad. I mean, you know as well as I do, there's more talent at Oakland Tech and inner city schools than there is at Concord High and Clayton Valley any day, right? We know that. And for those guys to struggle just to get a JV team going, I mean, we've had them on the schedule before, and I'm talking about Oakland and San Francisco schools, and they can't even play by week 3 because they don't have enough eligibility and all that. And then here comes COVID, and one more thing that's going to just tear them down. And I guarantee if some schools play, it'll be the schools like us and De La Salle that play, and it'll be the schools like Oakland Tech and Mission of San Francisco that don't.
Yeah.
That stuff bothers me. And again, it's I don't necessarily have the solution, but I'm saying there has to be more of a focus on those type of kids and how little they have as it is to get on the football field than maybe your middle to high income families and Danville and all that kid to get on the field. And I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like it's all the middle and upper class parents and schools advocating to play. And who the hell else cares about these other kids? And they're going to be the ones that really need it and probably get screwed in the process. So that part's bothered me. And as far as me handling it, I mean, I'm near the end of coaching. I love kids probably more than I did even when I was young. But the football part, I'm burnt. Not the field stuff. You can't get burnt out on football itself. But the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, whether it's dealing with getting stuff done, whether it's dealing with the 2 or 3 high maintenance kids that take 90% of your time, the family time football takes away. My daughter going down to Long Beach as soon as COVID's over. I want to be able to go anytime I want, to that. Even life goals that I didn't, I've always wanted to I started boxing when I was in college, and then right away out of college, I became a coach. The Monday after I graduated Santa Barbara, I became a football coach. And I was also student teaching, and I was track coach, and I was DC, and then I got a head coach job right away. So my coaching staff and I actually box every Tuesday and Thursday when we can. You know, we miss a couple times because we're old folks. But me and one of my coaches,
I could go for seeing you and Sione, man.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sione's a little scary. But so I'm gonna box in September in this tournament in San Francisco, and I might start pursuing the old man boxing circuit just to get it out of the system. You know what I mean? I mean, I ended football in a rough way. I blew my ACL, and at the same time, Santa Barbara folded football at the same time. So it was my junior year. I go out with an injury. I still had one more year of eligibility left, and then it was a D2 program, and that's when all the D2 schools. You were a little baby back then, so all the D2 schools, and especially in California, were folding. You know, Hayward and San Francisco State, Santa Barbara, Chico, and all that. So I didn't really end that part the way I would. I'd never play semi-pro. I mean, my goodness, you know, that's just train wreck waiting to happen. But so, you know, there's a couple things I haven't done personally because, and you know, Brock, when you coach the right way, the way Justin coaches and the way, you know, when you go all in, you're all in. You can't do anything else. You're barely getting home to be the dad and the husband you need to be, much less do something that you want to do as well. You know, and that's why coaches burn out. And that's why some coaches don't coach as hard, you know, because you do sacrifice so much. So my long answer to your question is I'm not suffering at all. I feel for the people suffering in real life, and you're seeing it on the news. I feel for these kids that are frustrated and keep being told next week we'll find out. Next week we'll find out. I can't even tell them that anymore because I lose my own credibility. You know, it's like, you know, give us a damn date. And if you got to make a tough decision and shut it down or only give us 5 games, let's go. And I know it's not as easy as it is to just to say that. But at the same time, man, you can't keep putting kids off like this. Yeah. And I mean, like, so here's a small example of what I know a lot of programs are going through. You know, I'm a jersey guy. We got new jerseys every year, right? That's my big thing, always getting new uniforms. I still haven't ordered uniforms because I don't know if we're going to have a season. I'm now down to one uniform place that can actually make uniforms in time with the season that actually can do what we want, you know, and uniforms will end up being like $12,000, $13,000. Do we spend it? Do we not? Because it's going to be form fitting for the kid, the name on the back. And it's like, we just got to know, man. And that's a little thing. It's just in my head because I was just talking to the Jersey lady. So it's a tough situation.
Well, and even like, I mean, we fundraise, right? So teams are in the same boat. Like I know even y'all were like, we're going to wait. A lot of programs are like, why are we going to fundraise if we don't know we're going to have a season? And, you know, we say a bunch of different things to that. And I think the reality is you're going to need money at some point, but
sooner or later you will. But the motivation for especially the seniors, man.
You know, it makes no sense if you're not going to play. But okay, you said a bunch in there, and a lot of it is good. And you're a coach who, for me, has always been someone where I'm like, of course, coached against you, and tried to stop the friggin' offense, which we'll get into later. But I think
you guys did a good job with seriously. You guys did some things
sometimes we did.
You made us panic more than I bet you guys will ever imagine. You know, at one time, Hamilton made a comment to Sparks and says, I don't think we're ever going to beat him. You know, and Sparks said, hey, man, I'll tell you what, you made the dude stress and you made him a better coach. And he goes, and he really did. The teams that I've always battled with have always make you better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but anyway, go ahead, Brock. I'm sorry.
No, I remember. I feel like I've just kind of learned a lot from watching the program and even the times I've been able to be on campus. And so I want to talk about like first is burnout concept because it's the end of a long year in sales. You know, I lead our sales team. In sales, this is kind of about the time everyone's like, I'm burnt out.
Yeah.
And we always say like, hey, you're forgetting your purpose. You need to remember your why. But even the reality is like, shoot, I get tired too.
Right.
You know, like if we're truly honest, because like you said, when you're putting everything into it and when you're doing it the right way and working hard, like you will get tired. So one time I was at, I think a weight training class or something, and you were talking about like adrenaline and like how to harness adrenaline.
Yeah.
I remember just finding it fascinating. And I was like, oh, wow, like that's really interesting. So I kind of want to hear about adrenaline, but I also am thinking like, how does that at one point tie into burnout? Like, is
Yeah.
there a point when you have no adrenaline, like literally biologically left in your system?
Right.
So, kind of an interesting question, but does that make enough sense to kind of start getting
It
after?
does. And there's two forms
Okay.
of adrenaline. There's your short term, which most people think of, you know, right before something's
Mhm.
going to happen, a big bench press, a big fourth down play. And there's the adrenaline that gets you going to get a program started, you know, to get somebody to where you know he could be. And maybe you have 2 years of adrenaline with this one kid because you know. But either way, the adrenaline gets you rolling and it really can help you in a lot of ways. But the negative is the dump at the end. And it's the dump at the end of a play. It's the dump at the end of a lift. And you got to be able to control that. And, you know, I could get all into the physiology and all that. My dad's a biochemistry professor. He went to
Okay.
Yale. He actually has a degree from Yale in biochemistry. He has his doctorate and he has his post-doctorate. And he's done more research than I can even tell you that's been published. I mean, he's probably the
No
smartest.
big deal.
He's the smartest human being I know. I mean, he's done research for all kinds of universities out here, from San Francisco to University of Pacific. And the thing is you got to be able to balance what you humanly have and what your mind can conjure. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but when you're about to do a lift, and I'm guessing if you were there, it was before we're about to lift. I'm
But
guessing.
yeah, I
Or
think
was it
so.
before a game or practice? Do you remember? Or?
No, it was before. It was at the beginning of a class.
Okay.
Yeah, so I
And
think it was before lift.
I usually, you know, try to save it to times where I start seeing the kids getting to the end of a phase of a cycle of working out or close to maxes and all that kind of stuff. And you really do. You have to manufacture that adrenaline sometimes because, yeah, it's easy to get all fired up if you're about to get your max. But if you're doing shoulder press and it's something you've already done before and it's not a max that you're going to write or get a free t-shirt for, it's not, there's nothing to really motivate your intensity. But the only way muscle builds is if you force it to do past what it can already do. And kids don't understand that. They feel pain, which is lactic acid and, you know, some oxygen deprivation, and they want to put the weights down. Most human beings do. And you have to fight through that. As long as your technique is good and you got a spotter, that pain is actually a good thing because it's going to send a signal for the body that we need to make a change. And when we make this change, we're going to be a little bigger, we're going to be a little faster, a little more explosive. And then to be able to take a 14 to 18-year-old kid and do that 4 days a week is tough. So I'm always trying to come up with different ways to get them to, hey, you do your warm up, you do your kind of precursor set to get ready, and your next 2 sets, you're basically saving your little brother's life with the energy you have to get that next rep up and to take it down slow too. Because another thing is, you know, you get a lot of muscle on the descent of a lift, but kids just want to get through it. So they'll bounce it off their chest or they'll bounce it at the bottom of the squat. You've seen that a million times. Or they
I've
won't
done
go
it
all
a
the way
million
down.
times, probably.
Right. They won't go all the way down on a squat, which is counterproductive to the knee joints. So there's all these little things, and kids are already got what my girlfriend said to me last period, what kind of work I got to get it in there. And they got all these things in their head. But for 45 minutes, man, you got to go blind, you got to go deaf, and you got to go totally focused on this workout. And that's when you get the results. And that's when you feel good about yourself. Because another thing about weight training, Brock, and you know this, it's the definition of failing every time. When you do a lift, you fail. But when you fail, you actually have improved, and your body and your mind knows it has to. And that's life. Every time we fail, hopefully we take something from that failure and get better. And if we do, we're always progressing forward. And that's one of the great things of weight training. It's the ultimate microcosm of life, you know, on a daily basis. And then you get to see the results. But the results you see, I always tell the kids, you know, kids are all digital now, long hand on the clock. You don't see it moving, but you know it's moving. And as long as you put that work in and then you go eat a quality meal within 45 minutes and get your protein in, those muscles are building. You're not going to see it tomorrow. If you take pictures, you'll see it in 30 days, you know, but it's impossible to see it on a daily basis. So you don't get that reward, which, by the way, and I'm one of the last coaches that does that. Oh, in my day, it was this and everything's so much better now. But what do kids get now? They get instant feedback right now with everything on their cell phones, right? They don't have to wait for stuff. I mean, even mail, you used to have to order something and you get it like 2 weeks later and you sent it in on a stamp. Now you get that thing through Amazon and it's at your door by the time you freaking press send, you know? So they got to be patient, and it's hard to fight the patience that they're being instilled to not even have anymore. And again, weight training is one of those things you have to have patience, and you got to understand also that sleep, how important that sleep is, but how much better you'll sleep if you really put it down in the weight room and gave it everything you had. So you feel better for the rest of the day. You've expanded your lungs, which makes stress go down. You got the blood flow going. And when you get adrenaline up and in a small adrenaline dump, it actually does make you feel better. If you kill yourself on it, it's not. And then you go ahead and sleep better. So there's all these positives. And then I'll always ask the kid, so if you know there's all these positives, why do you put the weight down early? And the same old answer is because it hurts or it's hard, you know, that type of thing. And you got to get kids to move past that. Hurting and hard is good as long as you're doing it right. And if they can get that and that becomes part of their lifestyle, they're like, man, this stuff does translate to everything. So I'll get emails, well, texts mostly, of kids that are going through a hard time or went through a hard time, or they have a, you know, asshole boss or in-law. And they're like, Coach, man, all that stuff you said makes sense. I wish I would have listened then. That's the main thing I get. I wish I would have listened when I was a junior. And some kids do get it, Brock. You know, there's those kids that they get it right away, but 90% of the kids aren't getting it until 2 months later, 2 years later, 20 years later, you know. And again, this is my MO. Sometimes I get a question, I just run with it, but I hope that makes sense.
It's just as fascinating to me now as it was then. So I guess, and I don't think I heard it. It's fascinating from like I want to talk about motivation and inspiration, because I think that's something that you've always done with your programs too, like how different a team plays and, you know, feels. I want to talk about program building a little bit, because that's something else that I know you're really strong in. But the dump. So what then though? So okay, let's say they push through. What happens after the dump? Is there just like a period of rest that needs to be there? Or like, how do you sort through that?
Yeah, because recovery is everything, right? Really, you don't grow when you lift, you grow when you recover. And then it kind of translates to back what you just said to me about coaches. So if I just went in the weight room and took roll and boom, off they go, that's pretty easy on me. That's not going to take a toll on me. But my MO has always been, you can make every conversation you ever have with a kid into a learning lesson. Whether it's Miss Wilson failed me. No, she didn't fail you. You know, and then you got to go on through that spiel. The weight train, I could just send them out to lift, or I can give them my 2 cents. Well, all that takes a toll on you as a coach as well. And that's what makes it tough on you. But what other way would you really want to go out? You know, as a coach, do you want to just be the guy that throws the basketballs out every freaking day in PE? So I've been able to deal with it in the fact that I always know that even though my energy is done at the end of the day and I've dumped my adrenaline and however you want to say it, my mentality of knowing I got something done will carry me through. So that kid, when he dumps that energy of the football game or the weight training session, he is going to be more tired. I think his body's better off for it in every way. But I think if he walks out of that weight room and knows that he just progressed, he just got better, he didn't waste 45 minutes, then that dump goes back up to actually a strong normal of what I would just call confidence, right? Now you're feeling good. So you can counter the dump by knowing you did something productive. Now, if you just got in a fight and you did something counterproductive and negative and you really hurt somebody, you know you're getting in trouble, that dump will take you real low, right? Because now there's nothing to justify the loss of all that adrenaline and energy that you just had. But when you know it's a positive thing, it becomes that much better to deal with. And the other thing I go back when I talk about confidence, we've all heard this when we're probably, I don't know, kindergarten through 5th grade. And it was usually that female teacher. And bless their heart, but they always said, you got to believe in yourself. You got to have confidence. You got to know. And no, you can't just do that. You have to prove that you're strong enough to believe in yourself or what you're about to accomplish. You can't just tell a kid to believe in themselves. To me, it's the sweetest thing you can say, but it couldn't be more wrong. So you have to constantly teach kids what they are doing to be able to believe in themselves. And so like you take a weight training session, you just beat pain. You just beat being tired. You might be sick. You might not like that you're weaker than Johnny in the weight training in the room, whatever, but you went all freaking out. And you know that you have progressed to catch Johnny, possibly surpass him if you keep doing this. And now you can apply that to everything. And that gives you confidence. And I always tell the kids, if you can go through a season with me especially for an offensive lineman, because I'm so freaking hard on those guys because they can take it. And what I say to them in front of that TV at the games, I should be arrested, right? I mean, I've had some team moms that I've actually had to say, you might want to leave right now because they're helping with candy and all that kind of stuff. And most of the time they're like, oh, that was great, coach. And I'm like, surprised. But so if they can take that from me, they can also take that boss that is just always on their ass, or that neighbor that just nitpicks about everything, or the most important one, that in-law that could ruin a marriage, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's another form of teaching kids what you just went through with me, what you just went through in the weight room, what you just went through in the 16-game season. Take that and translate it to everything in life, and everything else in life is actually going to seem easier. That's confidence. Yeah. That's confidence.
Your teams are like known for being tough, right? Like everywhere when you were at YV, which, oh my gosh, man, because I'm missing high school football so much, I stumbled on some YouTube page and I literally watched the game. I don't think it was Will Smith was your running back, but it was the game when Gutierrez and on De La Salle, you were coaching at YV really early in your career, and you guys played them really tough.
And they were loaded with NFL guys and D1 guys all over. I was one of the best De La Salle teams ever. And we played them at De La Salle.
Those guys. Yep.
Yeah, it went back and forth until the fourth quarter when DJ Williams said, I've had enough of this. He had enough. But yeah, with Will and you're right, Gutierrez, they had DJ in the backfield, Kevin Simon. I mean, Maurice Jones-Drew was a backup on that team, you know? Me and you would love to have a Maurice Jones-Drew once in our lifetime, much less be a backup. But yeah, and I think here was one of my biggest, proudest stats that I've been in almost every season I've coached. And there was a streak of like 9 years at Clovis, and I think 7 out of the 8 years until this last prior year were none of my teams had lost 2 games in a row. And the Fresno Bee actually quoted as almost a better stat, the guy that was writing. He was kind of biased towards me. Me and him were pretty good friends. His name is Andy Bogart. And he thought that our stat of going, I think it was 9 years straight of never losing 2 games in a row, was bigger than De La Salle winning 152 games in a row, because it showed what kind of resilience kids have. Because whenever like a boxer or someone in MMA, when they want to fight somebody, it's after a loss because they know confidence is down, morale is down. And what I feel like we've always been able to do, whatever staff I've had, because coaches are usually pretty good at having the same kind of mentality, we've been able to make those kids bounce back on Monday. Whether it's been the most horrific loss or we got a bunch of guys hurt, and that following Friday, we're in the winning column again. And to me, that really shows resilience and confidence, right? Because everything in life is about getting hit and getting back up. The roller coaster, you go down the roller coaster, and if you keep fighting, you're going back up. It's inevitable. It might take a little longer than you want. So that was one I've been proud of, but I've also had, like you just said, kids that kind of fit that mold. You know, at YV, kind of blue collar. We had a pretty multicultural team for back then. Clovis East, it was not a normal Clovis school. We were kind of the dumping ground for white flight. You know, it was actually a really strange phenomenon. We actually had a huge Hmong population. I didn't even know what a Hmong kid was when I went down there.
Yeah.
You know, and tough Mexican first generation kids. And then up here in Clayton, you know, things have changed. You know, everything's more multicultural. Clayton's not what it used to be. Even Concord and YV is not what it used to be. But also on that note, we get a decent amount of kids from over the hill. We got a decent Polynesian population after the Mamea family came through here. And getting to gel all those kinds of kids together, right? It's, to me, what you look at in our nation, and it's not just racial these days, it's political, it's socioeconomic, and it's racial. But when you get, you know, 50, 60 kids all on different pages socioeconomically, parents probably politically, and racially, and they come together for a common bind, and then when something happens like a loss and they don't blame each other, I'm pointing at my TV right now because the news is on. It's like, take a lesson, you know, country. Yeah. That's what it's all about, man. Don't blame everyone else. Look yourself in the mirror and work with everybody else. And
so you're the leader of that. How do you, and let's get into the motivation stuff. So I talk about toughness, and I think that it makes sense now hearing more about that. I knew your strength program was really strong, but hearing about that and your knowledge, your dad, and it's very fascinating. But motivation, you talk about confidence too, but like, how do you motivate year after year, team after team, kids coming from all these different places? How do you get them on the same page? A lot of coaches who will listen to this, like, give speeches to their team. And like, I don't know if you ever heard Hamilton. You probably saw some video once upon a time. Dude gave fire pregame speeches because he coached me when I was at Concord.
Yeah, for sure.
And he was an incredible motivator from that standpoint. Not a lot of guys can do that. You can. How do you do it?
I probably try to do it throughout the week more than just right before the game. I've actually been known to show up at the game during the national anthem. I drive my coaches crazy because I hate pregame. I never go on the bus. I haven't gone on the bus since I've been at Clayton, not one time. Well, maybe when we're in the state games and you go from the hotel, that thing. But, the regular bus, because I feel like, and we used to call it in Clovis, we already put the hay in the barn. It was I guess that's a pretty common thing. I'd never heard of it until my country friends down there used to say. But I try to put the hay in the barn before Friday. So I'm not necessarily doing that, get them all fired up right before the game thing. I'm doing it all 5 days. And it's much more cumulative. And I think when you do that, it lasts a little bit longer. And I'm not saying anything wrong with Hamilton's. I know I've heard a couple.
Yeah.
They're really good. And that's fun to do that. And I'm doing that more at halftime and sometimes before big games as well. But I think you do really have to say, and it goes back to that, every conversation with a kid and every word you say to them, you can turn it into a learning lesson, but you got to hone it in with your own head. So if a kid's having a bad day, if a kid's blaming somebody else, if a kid's getting overconfident, you literally have to think in your own mind, how can I make this conversation turn into something that's, like you just said, going to motivate him if he's down, maybe sometimes even knock him down a notch if he's too far up, and then get him to work hard throughout the week. So to me, that's the key. It's not just that 5 minutes before the game. It's accumulation of every day, and it's Saturday, and it's these days now with social media, you can do a lot of things, texting kids. And getting them in their good and bad and in different stages and get them back on page. So I think my motivation comes a little bit more from that long-term accumulation. But again, as a coach, like there's no single silver bullet I could give a coach except for to say, look, as soon as a kid starts talking, you need to start thinking. You can't just think about going getting milk before you get home or what you're dealing with when you go home with your wife and kids and all that. So again, it takes a lot of energy, but you can do it. It's just a constant battle to make sure. And then, when you're driving or about to fall asleep and you're thinking about a kid that's either doing good, bad, and indifferent and thinking what you're going to say to them next time you have that conversation. So you're already ready and almost having the conversation in your head before you see them. So it's never exactly the way you picture it, right? It never goes quite exactly. Sometimes it goes better, but making sure that you have a plan all the time. Because here's another thing, Brock, that I drive my coaches crazy with. Number one is probably that pregame thing, right? But number two is I never have practice plans. Zero. I don't even have, the only practice plan I'll have is when we're meeting for film. And then it just goes from there. So Tisa or Canessa or Reynolds, when I had Reynolds, they would have defensive practice plans. And I would just, when they're getting water, I'll go get water right after them. When they say they're done, I'm done. If we're going to 7-on-7, I just stop what I'm doing in 7-on-7 because it never, in my way of thinking, goes exactly like it does. And if you try to force a time frame and you try to force something that is a prediction with kids and with 60, I've had 95 kids on a football team before. We've had 80 since I've been at Clayton. There is no way you can take that many kids and do it right and make sure it fits in an exact time frame. Now, I'm a lot better at getting kids done at 6:30 because those new rules came out about 5 years ago. Remember those? I mean, I was breaking that. It wasn't a rule before then, but I'm glad it came out. And it's also made my parents a little more happy. But there'd be times we'd finish practice 10 minutes early, and there'd be practice I'd finish practice 50 minutes late. Now, becoming a dad and having my daughter play lacrosse, I realized what kind of pressure I was putting on parents too. But my point is, I'm always thinking in the moment. I'm always thinking of a plan, but it's going to adjust all the time. And that's kind of the way I've lived my life too. So.
Yeah. And that's way different for most high school coaches.
Oh, yeah.
The periods, the horns going, you're going from station to station and you are, I know you're very organized, and that'll take us to the last thing until we get some tape going. is the program building. So Clayton Valley Charter, for example, to me from the outside in, I'm like, it seems like you have the entire community involved in your programs, like from parents to administration to other sports. And there's like this level of connectedness that I think a lot of coaches wish they had. And I think they probably use excuses like, oh, it's just different here, or, oh, they don't support us. But there's something that you're able to do to kind of galvanize everyone around the program. So I'm just intrigued to kind of hear you talk about that.
You've already answered it, man. It's not blaming the situation you're in and just throwing your hands up in the air. And that's what so many people do. So everybody's had the bad parent or two. Everybody has a couple high maintenance kids. For the most part, I almost can't even complain about my administration. They've been really good. But I think the reason they're good is it's almost a pre-controlled it with making sure that when kids are having problems in their classroom or problems even at home, I'm on it so fast that the administration appreciates it so much that they give me more than an average administration would. They know how much I preach staying clean. They know how much I preach staying home on Friday nights and Saturday nights and being ready the right way. And don't get me wrong, you know we've had our kids screw up. I mean, we've had some major screw ups. But I think every time we do have a screw up, my administration knows, number one, I'm on it right away. And number two, it wasn't because I was letting something go or being negligent, because I'm on their ass almost to a fault. And so I think what that also does is, you know, I've literally had moms tell me, Johnny will not do the dishes when I tell him to do the dishes. And I'll roll my eyes and go, are you kidding me? Or I've had teachers tell me that Tommy won't bring a pencil to class. And I've opened that Pandora's box. You know, it is my fault at parent meetings and what I tell the teachers at teacher meetings. But because I get on those things right away, and I'll take that thing serious and not let a kid lift and you have to walk around a telephone pole, a basketball pole for 45 minutes. And then they see the result of Johnny doing the dishes and Tommy bringing his pencil to class. That actually helps that galvanization that you're talking about, where people come together. And now you got teachers that are not going, he's just another football coach, you know, or you don't got administrating going, football doesn't mean anything. They realize how important of an impact it is. And then they talk to people in the community. The community wants to help out. And also another thing I've been really blessed with is parents whose kids graduate stay around the program. They're doing our chains 5-6 years after their kids graduate, when their plan was only to do it while their kid was playing. Booster club parents hanging around. You know, my wife's boss helped for about 6 years after her kid graduated, and she's as busy as heck with our boosters program and doing all that type of stuff. Kids whose dads coached, planning only to coach when their kid was there, like Fatu and Pierre. Mm-hmm. They're two guys whose kids played 5 years ago. Well, Pierre's did, you know, Fatu's 3 years ago, and they're still with me coaching. So I think that's how it does. There's no real formula to it, but to be very proactive and really get on things right away. And then, you know, I'm a propaganda guy. The moment we do something good, I'm putting it on a t-shirt. I'm putting it on a banner, you know, I mean, and that's something that I think kind of annoys people, that maybe their program's not doing as good in the community or maybe even on our campus, but then they start doing it and they start realizing, hey, it freaking works. Put everything in the announcement you can. Put everything out there, because kids want recognition, you know. And nowadays when kids will put, you know, I just got an offer from DVC on social media, you see how bad they freaking want that recognition. Yeah. So doing that too, you know, giving away t-shirts to our staff. They love that. You know, Brock, adults are just like kids. They will run an old lady over for a free t-shirt. But if they got to pay $6 for it, they don't want it. You get it to them free and they'll wear it 6 days a week. You know? Yeah. So it's so interesting. Crazy. So doing things and you know what? It's just like through fundraising, you know, getting the people all excited about that. That's one of the big things I always want to do, is give these kids a t-shirt for doing their 20 emails. I'm probably the only pain in the ass that does that to you guys, you know, every time. But then you do got to be careful of this. And I've been guilty of this one. The kids that are already getting too much praise, the running backs, especially in our program, now you got to find a way to bring them back down, and it's not just all about them. So, you know, Miles Harrison, you remember Miles, right? He didn't even care if he got praise. He didn't care if he was in the paper. He didn't care if he got his name. But when he got 3,000 yards and he had all those big things, it was all about Miles. And I had to really work with Miles to make sure he was showing his appreciation to the linemen and in class and all that. That's why I benched him against Cardinal Newman. He was late for one class, and I benched him for the first half against Cardinal Newman. And my administration was like, "Are you kidding? They're undefeated right now. You're gonna bench your best player for a half?" I'm like, I got to show that this is who we are, you know? And thank God he was able to play in the second half because he helped us come back and win. But the point being is when you do those things, they pay off so many times more than people realize. It's delayed gratification at its finest, right? You take a chance, but, you know, I mean, the last 2 years I've kicked my best running back, highest touchdown guy off the team in the middle of the season. You know, I don't want to say their names. You know who they are, but by far, both of those kids were D1 kids. One I kicked off right before the season started, and one I kicked off right before the league started. And it sucks because they didn't do anything like tragically bad. They didn't rob a liquor store or beat some old lady up, but they were constantly breaking down rules, and it takes down the other 65 kids that are doing things right. So then you get community backing from that too, you know?
Yeah. There's nothing worse than like being the kid on the team or the 99% of the kids on the team doing it the right way. And then you're like, oh, this guy gets to do what he wants. So that's a big thing. And it's hard to uphold boundaries as coaches. Concord, same issues, right? Like, oh, okay, this kid who's a stud, who's one of your best athletes and who's got a great personality and who you really like as a person, right? But you're like, dude, and I see it at work sometimes, like, hey, I might like you as a person, but I can't encourage this behavior. Like sometimes it's like we need to hold people accountable because if we truly are teaching life lessons and stuff, it's not going to help them out in the long run.
They're just going to get worse. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, for those of you who don't know, most people do. All the years, I think you're like 87 and 19 or 20 or something like that at Clayton Valley. You guys have been super successful. We could never beat you. You guys won the state championship last
close,
year.
Though, right?
Yeah, we got close to bunch, but close is only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades or something like that. But
Those were some fun games, though.
They were entertaining. But last year you guys did it, and first time, you know, I grew up in Clayton, out in the country. My dad went there. My brother played there. I went there for a year before I left to Concord when Hamilton left. But first time in school history, you guys won a state championship. I know you're like, dude, I'm burnt. I'm tired. I'm at the end of my rope in coaching. Really cool that you got that championship. I don't know what you want to show as far as film, but I think it'd be fun to look at, you know, something from last year or whatever stands out to you. I don't know if you want to get Christy to help, but at the bottom.
Yeah. So I'm guessing we just maybe you can even go through it with me. I'd open Google first, right? Because that's where Huddle is.
Yeah. So on this actual window, you can – at the bottom of the Zoom meeting, there's a green share screen button.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready to click that.
Brock, let me call Christy because I don't want to. Okay. Christy, you know too, and you know Sione pretty well because last year was going to be my last year. You know, and I almost felt like I couldn't leave the kids in a situation like this once everything got rolling. You know, I went back and forth like I always do. But Sione was with me when I won, you know, the first time a championship. We won NCS in 1999. And then for him to coach with me in last year was pretty cool because we're basically going from where it started to where it ended together. And Sione was obviously a huge reason we won, especially in 1999. My goodness. But anyway, so when you go back to that was good. And I didn't, you know, I make the joke about Marv Levy a bunch, but I mean, if I'd have lost 3 state championships, Brock, I don't know how I could have lived with myself. Gabe went to the state championship. It was the Elk Grove game. I mean, we could. I
was at that game. That was awesome.
And one of the reasons I like that too is it's what's really convinced me that we had the level of players to start spreading things out. Because I hate to say it, but I haven't felt confident enough in the kids that we get on a yearly basis to try to spread people out and always knowing that we're probably playing De La Salle at one point or another and try to beat them with spread. Because the one reason we've been able to hang with De La Salle, at least in the first halves, I should never say hang with them completely, is because our offense has given them, you know, a little bit more struggle than a spread offense would. You know, they come in and, man, you spread those guys out and you're in trouble, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so that's been there's always been one or two programs when I was at Clovis or at YV that I knew for sure we're going to have more D1 type kids than us, you know? And I always got a little paranoid about trying to do what you do with D1 type kids. Not saying that you guys obviously proved you can do it with non-star kids, college recruit star kids and be really successful too, spreading them out. I just didn't feel like it would jive with my weight training program as much, nor did I know it. Like the way you guys know spread is the way I know heavy and double tight. So,
yeah.
So I'm not saying in any way it's the answer. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, whatever you want to take us through, I'm down for. You can.
Okay, so I got it up, and then it says you are sharing screen. So do you see it now, or do I still got to press a button?
Yep, I see it.
Do you want me to enlarge it a little, Coach? Or?
Yeah, you can do full screen.
Oh, I got you. Oh, I can see you still. Great.
Yeah.
And then I'll actually go to maybe near the end because that was kind of the fun part. So what we've been doing, slowly but surely, is kind of moving things towards spread or spread type sets. Depending on our personnel, depending on what point of the game it is and all that type of stuff. I've always called it my 2-minute offense, right? You always got to have a 2-minute offense where things go wrong. But usually we're in a situation where we're trying to run the clock out because we're up enough, And then when you're playing a De La Salle, you're down by so dang much. You better have some spread to go, but now you're playing into their hands. So anyway, I'm not sure what point in the game it was as far as score, but it was close the entire game. So, I guess something that you guys do all the time and what I really like is running short screens. Because to me, a short screen is just like a running play, like what we call rocket. Rocket's that play where we would go in motion, try to get outside of you guys when you'd crowd that box up to stop power. But, this is the same concept. You get a fake by your tailback and you get a quick flick out there. The biggest difference is when you're talking, and everything I'm saying, Brock, I know you know. I'm just saying this for people.
No, it's all good.
I'm just saying this for people that might be listening that are trying to learn some stuff as far as schemes. But here's the big difference if you take this compared to a spread outside run. If I'm double tight and I do a quick pitch to the tailback right here and get out real quick, I got guys that are born and bred to block out in front, right? I got guards, I got tackles, I got a fullback, I got an H-back, whatever it might be, leading. Not only those guys bigger and stronger than these guys out here, but they do it every day at practice. Who are the guys that don't want to do that at practice? These guys, right? So then you got to go back into a more motivation of how to teach these skill guys how to do something. No one signs up for receiver and says, because I want to stock block. and the rules have taken the fun out of crackback. And I think it's good because I used to play strong safety. So I've been cracked by college, receivers, and it's no fun. And I get why they took it out. But you took out the most fun blocking scheme for a receiver. And now you take a receiver and make them do the most boring thing in the world, which is basically play defense in basketball and have them do that. So that is my big trade-off, and we're not as good at it yet either because we don't practice as much. So this is Rocket at a spread, but just relying on a different group of blockers to do it.
How do you think they did?
You got us 3 or 4 yards, your average run play,
Yeah.
Here's the other two variables, right? In Rocket, we're not going to drop the ball. Even high school, even college D1 guys drop slip screens once in a while. It's not very often. And then the other thing is too, I've always said this, the longer you have the ball in your hand, the less likely you are to fumble it. Receivers get hit almost right after they catch it. Running backs don't get hit for about 2 seconds after they receive it. So there's a lot of trade-off. You can tell I've thought this stuff through so much on trying to talk myself either into spread or out of spread.
You'd always tease it when you guys are up big. You'd always tease it, and we're
we're playing a team we felt. That's exactly it. Playing a team we thought. Here was my lame concept too, Brock. I always felt. I'm trying to pause this here. I always felt if we showed enough spread, that teams would have to practice for it before they played us and wouldn't get to practice against our heavy stuff very much. And almost every coach I've talked to after said, Murph, we didn't take 1 second we just worked on the heavy stuff because that was the stuff that was difficult. So my whole philosophy of, oh, we're going to make them do more than they have to do was an absolute failure from every honest coach I've ever talked to. Now,
yeah, sometimes they do it.
Here's one thing I like out of spread that I don't know why more coaches don't do it. And you know, from coaching D-line against us, we pull guys the opposite way of the ball. We fake block everywhere. And that's what makes an offense very powerful when you have to pause for a second and then defend power. Because a lot of powerful offenses, especially back when you think of like the Bear Bryants and the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was just come right at you and you knew it was coming. My philosophy has always been, fake handoffs are great and wing T-con, but you got to pull the keys the opposite way because good coaches like you guys aren't looking in the backfield. And if you are, you're going to pull that kid out and yell at him and say, get your damn eyes on the guards, get your eyes on the tackles, read the triangle. So the one thing I really like about throwing these short routes is if you can see our left guard, he is pulling, as is the running back, faking what we call Trojan, which is our outside sweep. And I think my right guard is too. Am I right? Yeah. So both guards are pulling opposite. Tailback's going opposite. We're pass setting, which hopefully gets these guys to drop a little bit. And then we're throwing a slip screen or a bubble, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up linebacker, but then coaching D-line, it makes it pretty miserable. We called it split toss when you would have, each set of the line going the opposite way. And that play was the one that for us was always the most difficult to defend because you got to the edge so quick and you'd be only defending it with half your defense because the other half is reading their keys, and so you got to read. There's more for a linebacker to, be able to take in, to be able to get, it's like a next level read, like understanding like, hey, where is the wing lined up, in terms of when they do split toss or when they do this. And it's not straightforward as like, oh, okay, the guard pulled to the strong side. That is running power that way. Right. Because like you said, it's good to throw off smart teams.
And the other thing is I'll have people say, man, you ran the same play like 6 times in a row, either after the game by a coach or, a fan or a dad. And we actually ran 6 different plays.
Yeah.
They actually look like, to the average observer, I'm not going to fool someone like you guys on the sideline with that, but maybe your kids, that we just ran the same exact play, yet we might have handed off the ball the same or faked it, but we had 6 different blocking schemes. So when people say that kind of stuff, I'm like, man, you should see our wristband we have 120 plays on a wristband, plus I have the no huddle stuff. We have a ton of plays, but people always think we only run 3 or 4. And I always tell them that's a compliment, right? Yeah. If I'm hiding my hand that good to you, I'm a good poker player. If I'm giving away what I have, it's a little different. So here's one that might be funny. Everyone always asks me this question, Brock, why don't you return punts, right? And I don't know if you saw it was a high school state championship. There's a minute and 1 second left in the game. And this team, you saw Alabama.
That? Yeah.
Right. And how did that whole debacle start? With a punt, right? So I don't punt and I don't return punts, not just because I don't think you get the advantage of the yardage, but there's so many mistakes made in them. And I know Brian wasn't a big punter either. I love that about him. But also kids drop punts so dang much. And the ball, if you really take stats of where the ball rolls from high school punts, I don't know, college is probably different because it's such a powerful punt. But if you take stats, more often than not, that ball either bounces laterally or backwards than it actually bounces forward. And when it bounces forward, it'll be a yard or 2. Now, every once in a while, you get the holy roller, and a decent amount of times that'll even go in the end zone. But for the amount of times that kids actually drop them, or a penalty on a punt return, right? Or a holding on, roughing the punt or whatever. So I'm actually surprised at myself right here for returning the punt. Now, everyone in America knows that whenever we return a punt, we always return right. Yeah, we weren't able to. That's another thing. Sometimes you put 2 guys back and you can't even feel it. So that ball probably rolled 1 or 2 yards forward anyway, right? And we took the chance of turning it over on the 28-yard line. It's just not worth it. So
yeah.
All right, so here's a great one. It just started raining, and we fumbled the first snap. Here's another thing, Brock, that I'm going back and forth with too. Trying to get a play that's a little, I don't know why it's going back and forth. I must have an option that I shouldn't have, but something that I think is really important. If we play this season, our first month is going to be in February, right? And we were eventually, we were thinking it was going to be January. And my coaches are going, Murph, great time to choose a spread, you know, right? Your first 2 months are going to be the 2 rainiest months of the year. So now I'm kind of doing the opposite. We're running spread, but our 2-minute offense, which is now our 6-minute slow it down offense or rain offense, is going to be heavier or double tight. Because I really do believe that even though my concept of fooling coaches into practicing more than they need to wasn't the benefit, it's the benefit of that transition. Those transitions seem to get people, and the personnel that you put down for different transitions. So I know you didn't ask this, but a lot of people are. Are you still going to keep heavy in the offense? And it's absolutely we are, you know.
Yeah.
And all our run plays are still gap schemes. There you go.
Yep.
Right, Brock?
Yep.
He fair catches it, which would have gave us no yards anyway. Misjudges it. Now it's a live ball.
He got on it. Did he get on it?
I think we got on it, but we lost, 7 yards and a heart attack in the process. So now here's one thing that coaches will say to me too. Well, maybe it's because you guys don't practice it enough. And there is some validity to that, but we practice. We have a special teams period that we did every day for the last 6 out of the 8 years. I don't do it anymore, where we would literally right after warm up, we would go return punts, return kicks, kickoff, not special teams, but just the skill part of the special teams. And I think it was for 15 to 20 minutes when I had McDuff. Never saw any difference. I mean, I don't know, maybe we're just bad coaches, but we didn't see much of a difference in practicing it that way. So, and it ended up taking more practice time. So that's another thing. And I think Brian's version was this too. When you don't have to practice PAT and you don't have to practice punt, that's more time to practice your offense, right?
Yep.
So,
yep.
We are limited to time no matter what. So here we're in heavy. So another thing too that if you probably have noticed, I always change the backfield from offset to pistol to sometimes right up on us. There's times where we pitch. Come here, buddy. Let me grab him. There's times where we pitch most of our balls. There's times where we hand off. We reverse pivot. So you can never really key on our backfield too. At least I'm hoping that's the case, right? And that's when I've had feedback where people are going, man, your backfield stuff drives us nuts, because sometimes we think we'll have a key if your back is near or far, pistol, whatever, if you're pitching. So we've done a lot of times where when we run outside, it's a handoff. When we run off tackle, it's a pitch, because the pitch gives the illusion you're going outside and the handoff gives the illusion you're going off tackle, and we're doing the exact opposite. Because the bottom line is, no matter how strong your kids get, you can have big Polynesian kids all the way across the front and outweigh people by 300. Good teams are going to find a way to stop you if you just run right at them. You got to trick them. It's like you just said, you got to make kids think. As soon as a defensive kid is on autopilot, he's going to kill you. Even the average high school linebacker is going to bring it. But if he has to think and then go, it's a totally different ballgame. So, and I'm just giving you answers to things coaches ask me all the time.
Oh, no, yeah. No, it's I love it. Maybe a couple more plays. It'd be nice to see, like you're saying, to the average viewer, if my dad's, he coached for a long time, but he's not in it nearly as much anymore. He's going to listen to this and give me crap. He'll be like, wow, he'd be one of those guys. He was at this game with me. He left at halftime because it was pouring rain. He goes, I don't think Clayton's going to win. And I'm like, I don't know, man, watch out. But he'd be like, man, they got to open it up, right? You've probably heard parents and you've heard all this your whole time. And they're like, he's just doing the same thing. So it might be nice for you to point out, like, hey, this looks the same, but look at these little nuances.
Well, here's an example. So normally when you run power, your tight end goes and blocks a play side or backside backer, right? And that gives a key for this defensive end to squeeze and jam the fullback's kick out. So we're going to fake like we're reaching this kid and block this kid instead, which makes this defensive end thinks he's getting hooked, which makes him come upfield a little bit and makes it an easier kick out, right? So probably the number one guys I've tried to mess with are the defensive ends and your inside backers. If you can get those guys thinking, all these D linemen are easy to deal with. When these guys are all on top of you and the D linemen are diving at the ground, or they're big and strong, or playing Pac-12 football, that becomes tough. So if you see our tight end on the right, he's going to release outside on 53. 53 thinks an outside run's coming. And now that's an easy kick out for a smaller fullback to be able to get this kid. And get
he
his head
played it.
inside.
This guy played it okay, right? I mean, he reacted as quick as you can for a high school kid.
He did. He what we always say is he retraced his steps. But if you see Brock, he does get upfield a little bit.
Okay.
See those 2 steps, 2.5 steps upfield allows us to get at least our head inside.
Mm-hmm.
So now our running back has already said to himself, okay, I can go off tackle or cut back to A gap. Now this nose guard, this 56 kid was pretty good. They actually had 2 nose guards, and they were slanting any which way. And I run to my sideline and to the right so much, which I guarantee you already know. So whenever we run to the right, I always tell our running backs, the moment you see that end kicked out, don't think that's it. Look for cutback. And you can see what we're doing right here. We'll take 56 and let him ruin his momentum and go into 58. And we'll do some kind of kick slide kind of thing over here. So there's a cutback right there. So we almost always have 2 holes in every single play. It's the original hole, which is off tackle, and the cutback. So it didn't look like we did a great job from the other angle. Yeah, see, we hit the cutback too late.
Yeah, he was there.
Look how long that hole is open. 56 is taking himself out. We're letting him do it. We're tunneling this kid right here, and there's a tremendous – it's almost like a draw, right? We're almost draw blocking this backside right here. And our running back is too baggy. And we got a great 4-yard hole with a one-on-one with the kid that looks like he's a cover corner. That's some of our running backs. Miles would have taken that 98 yards, right, Brock? You know that. And I'm not saying anything negative of whatever running back was in.
But that would be your coaching point when you get to the sideline and you're on the TV with them. You'd say, for the most part,
absolutely,
O-line was solid. Running back, you got to see those kids.
And then you know what the running backs do? Because if you tell them that without the TV, they're going to be like, "No, coach,
oh, it wasn't there, coach."
But then you show them on the TV on the sidelines, and they're like, "Oh man, okay, coach, 24 power next play. I swear I'll hit." And they do, because when they see it, they believe it. When they hear it, they don't believe it until Saturday morning, and it's too late, right?
Yeah.
So that TV thing is outstanding.
Yeah.
All right, so we're probably going to do the same play, but to the other side. Now, we don't influence with the tight end on here, but we got a wing and the fullback on the same side. So we'll see what happens. The DN will probably – now, see, this is the other thing, too. This is called a bluff block for us. If you look at the wing, he's going to fake and make eye contact with this kid to make the kid step out. So the same concept as the influence block over here, but here we're going to fake bluff block him and then go kick out here. And you can see it makes this kid step forward. Now, my H-back, terrible job. His initial hit was good. You can see this kid go back, but then he doesn't keep his head inside, and the kid crosses face all day. So that was what I call great upper body, terrible lower body. He popped him. He had pad level, got his face mask in the right place and fairly safe, but then he didn't move his feet right. And you know, being a D lineman, this kid uses his hands pretty good. But he's undersized. We should have taken that kid to the freaking sideline. And then our post blocker and our double team did not do his job. 51 held his ground. That was the other kid that was playing nose guard. But what you can see, too, is now we got a two-way go. We got off tackle right here, and we still got this with a puller. That's why we get more yards on this play. Because even though the cutback was smaller and kind of closed up at the end, we had a puller that read it as well. And if you see this linebacker, so a lot of times, Brock, we will never touch the play side linebacker on an off tackle play with a play side player. Because a good kid is going to see down block and double team and go flying in here. But the backside guard's got a better angle to kick him because we're always talking about using momentum against guys. So if we block 34 from a guy on the left side, we might lose that battle or get a stalemate. But if we come around here, we can use 34's momentum against him because the guy is going to hit his inside shoulder instead of his outside shoulder, and that's what happens. So 34 is right in front of the ref, and now he's able to be blocked by a guy using his momentum against him. It was really the double team that turned into a single team that broke down. But here's another thing that we try to teach, and we did this with you guys a lot, because you guys slanted so much and you guys hit gaps so freaking fast. But I always tell kids, look, So 20 is an undersized linebacker anyway. This big lineman right here needs to let him go. 20 has already erased himself from the play, or he can chip him and go to the next level. Because when you shoot gaps, again, you don't want to stay with a guy that might shoot a gap and be all the way up here, even though you guys redirect really well. Most kids don't. They'll just keep going. So this is a good example of what I would have said. Either you should have probably stiff-armed and went here, or stiff-armed him and went vertical.
Yeah.
Now he's spending all this time on this guy. It's just unnecessary.
Well, it's interesting because when we, would try to defend it, when I first came to Concord, they were running the 3-stack, and I had gotten done playing at Davis and was trying to play football. Like, I always gave Randy a hard time. I said, this is not football. You're creating huge lanes and just flying all over the place. I was It's a dream for y'all to play against it. And then when we would play against you, they would just bear crawl and cut the pullers and crap. And I was
But you guys mixed it up pretty good. There was one year we played you at DDC. I think it was one of the championship games. We had Ray Jackson. And you said, we're not letting Ray go off tackle, because Ray was one of those guys that bounce out, and even though he's fast, you could chase him down from angles. And you took all 3 linebackers and shoved them all in one hole. Like, you gave us off tackle. You let us down block your 3, you let us kick out your end, but you brought all 3 linebackers in a freaking bad mood right through that hole. And that was tough, man. Yeah. You guys were one of the few guys that actually were able to fit all 3 backers. So, and we've had a few teams be able to do that too. But usually in the fourth quarter, those linebackers are done because they're just getting hit so many times. You guys were able to keep those guys motivated the whole game. And I think Ray did bounce a couple out because he's so dang fast. We got a couple pass plays, I think, off. But you guys are one of the few teams that took away our mainstay play with something a little different,
Yeah.
Stuffing 3 guys from 5 yards back into a hole, that's not easy to do, man.
Yeah.
Because what do guys usually do? They get caught up, just so you know. They usually get caught up in the wash. The wheel backer never gets there. Sam and Mike might. Mike will sometimes hesitate and get caught up in the double team. You'll get Sam in there, but nobody but you guys could ever actually get Will in there also. That was pretty impressive. So
yeah. Well, I know Randy misses those battles, and, I know you're probably going to miss coaching quite a bit. It sounds like it's getting close to the end of the journey. But, man, hopefully I appreciated the time today. Hopefully we'll get some sort of season like you're saying. And I know maybe not every school is going to get to play, but it'd be good if some schools did. I mean, we don't need to get into that any more than we already know, but I appreciate you making time, man. It was good to watch some film, good to chat about your program, and definitely miss the matchups.
I think anytime you guys, when I say you guys, adults and us, bring extra light to kids, you can't lose, man. Whether it's advocating for kids, whether it's giving them better notoriety, giving coaches time to, maybe talk like you did right here, where a coach or two that's younger can learn from what we're saying. I mean, that's what it's all about. And that's what I love about coaching, is that part. I'll never, ever end that part of me. And, even if I do go another year or whatever I end up going, it's because of that type of stuff that'll keep me here. The kids, seeing the kids get results, seeing people doing neat things for kids and being a part of that. Here's another thing, Brock, that I love. And you being an assistant coach got to understand it. Us as head coaches need guys like you, because for such a long time, I did not have strong assistant coaches. And it wasn't necessarily in the game of football. It was, and it was partially my fault too. I want to be real clear on that. I was such a dictator that people were afraid to step up. Now I got guys like I had Reynolds and McDuff were big time step up. Tisa and Canessa and Fatu and all these guys that I got right in Spark. I can name a lot because pretty much my whole staff is that. Assistant coaches are what makes it go, man. Because you can't do it as a head coach. You can't. You don't have enough eyes. You don't have enough energy, and it's going to burn you out. But when assistant coaches step up and do good things, man, that's when it gets rolling. That's going to be the hardest part about leaving, as far as an adult part. Is my administration and my assistant coaches are as good as they've ever been. I'm like, man, I'm going to leave now. And I got great kids, and I've always had great kids, but now I probably have those two things in place even more. But comes the time, it comes a time where you gotta let it go.
You got to be De La Salle, man. You got to be De La Salle before you go. That's what I'm saying.
I told Justin when this whole thing started, I said, hey, man, me and you might have to play each other 10 times next year. I said, I'll be happy. You know, if I could tie you or get you once, I'll be happy. But you know what, too? That's a good man right there. You know, me and Justin, we sat at the all league meeting, kind of ostracized with each other. No one wants to talk to us. They don't want me in that league anymore. You know, that EVAL. They never want to play Justin. And he's always gotten a bad rap, or Dale Sal's always gotten a bad rap the way I did when I first came into to Clayton. You know, when we won in 2012, that first year I got here, I knew it was coming, but I didn't know it was coming that hard. I mean, it was a blistering ass whooping of social media, clay court, and you know, man, Brian didn't help. I'll tell you that right now. You know, but what it did is it made me learn a lot about how careful you got to be on every little thing, because even something that might look bad, when you look like me or you coach and have some success, they're going to use it against you. You know, and that's what ended up happening. It's like now my coach is like, Murph, do something wrong. We're freaking bored. We never get to read about you in clay court no more. You're never getting suspended or anything like that. So
when you're in the arena, you're gonna get criticized no matter what, man.
Yeah, I mean,
it's gonna be.
Brock, you got a taste of how I'm teaching how to lift, but all I heard for 10 years, 11 years in Clovis was that I was selling steroids to our kids. It drove me crazy. Could you imagine a high school coach lasting more than a month selling steroids to his kids? I mean, it's so stupid and preposterous that every program, there's another thing that always kills me. Every year, 2 or 3 kids leave mad because they didn't start and they didn't get a scholarship, right? Are those kids really going to just hold this crazy secret that you're doing all these things that, and it was so insane to me when people would say, this is what I've heard. I'm like, do you really believe that? I mean, how can you even, that like cross your mind? But the bottom line is so much of that stuff's even behind that I don't have to deal with it. It's like, I'm going to leave and stuff. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, but thanks, Brock. I appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, definitely, man. Appreciate the time.